Section 19 of History of Egypt, Volume 1, by Gaston Maspero, read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Chapter 3 The Legendary History of Egypt, Part 3. Were there ever duller legends and a more senile fantasy? They did not spring spontaneously from the lips of the people, but were composed at leisure by priests desirous of enhancing the antiquity of their cult, and augmenting the veneration of its adherents in order to increase its importance. Each city wished it to be understood that its feudal sanctuary was founded upon the very day of creation, that its privileges had been extended or confirmed during the course of the first divine dynasty, and that these pretensions were supported by the presence of objects in its treasury which had belonged to the oldest of the king gods. Such was the origin of tales in which the personage of the beneficent Pharaoh is often depicted in ridiculous fashion. Did we possess all the sacred archives, we should frequently find them quoting as authentic history more than one document as artificial as the chronicle of Aitnabsu. When we come to the later members of the Ennead, there is a change in the character and in the form of these tales. Doubtless Osiris and Sit did not escape unscathed out of the hands of the theologians, but even if sacerdotal interference spoiled the legend concerning them, it did not altogether disfigure it. Here and there in it is still noticeable a sincerity of feelings and liveliness of imagination such as are never found in those of Shu and Sibu. This arises from the fact that the functions of these gods left them strangers, or all but strangers, to the current affairs of the world. Shu was the stay, Sibu the material foundation of the world, and so long as the one bore the weight of the firmament without bending, and the other continued to suffer the tread of human generations upon his back, the devout took no more thought of them than they themselves took thought of the devout. The life of Osiris, on the other hand, was intimately mingled with that of the Egyptians, and his most trivial actions immediately reacted upon their fortunes. They followed the movements of his waters, they noted the turning points in his struggles against drought, they registered his yearly decline, yearly compensated by his aggressive returns and his intermittent victories over Typhon. His proceedings and his character were the subject of their minute study. If his waters almost invariably rose upon the appointed day, and extended over the black earth of the valley, this was no mechanical function of a being to whom the consequences of his conduct are indifferent. He acted upon reflection, and in full consciousness of the service that he rendered. He knew that by spreading the inundation he prevented the triumph of the desert. He was life, he was goodness, Onofriu, and Isis, as the partner of his labours, became like him the type of perfect goddess. But while Osiris developed for the better, Sit was transformed for the worse, and increased in wickedness as his brother gained in purity and moral elevation. In proportion as the person of Sit grew more defined, and stood out more clearly, the evil within him contrasted more markedly with the innate goodness of Osiris, and what had been at first an instinctive struggle between two beings somewhat vaguely defined, the desert and the Nile, water and drought, was changed into conscious and deadly enmity. No longer the conflict of two elements, it was war between two gods, one labouring to produce abundance, while the other strove to do away with it, one being all goodness and life, while the other was evil and death incarnate. A very ancient legend narrates that the birth of Osiris and his brothers took place during the 5 additional days at the end of the year. A subsequent legend explained how Nûît and Sibu had contracted marriage against the express wish of Ra, and without his knowledge. When he became aware of it he fell into a violent rage, and cast a spell over the goddess to prevent her giving birth to her children in any month of any year whatever. But Thought took pity upon her, and playing at draughts with the moon won from it in several games 1/72nd part of its fires, out of which he made 5 whole days, and as these were not included in the ordinary calendar, Nûît could then bring forth her 5 children, one after another, Osiris, Haroëris, Sit, Isis, and Nephthys. Osiris was beautiful of face, but with a dull and black complexion; his height exceeded 5½ yards. He was born at Thebes, in the first of the additional days, and straightway a mysterious voice announced that the Lord of all, Nibu Urzeru, had appeared. The good news was hailed with shouts of joy, followed by tears and lamentations when it became known with what evils he was menaced. The echo reached Ra in his far-off dwelling, and his heart rejoiced, notwithstanding the curse which he had laid upon Nûît. He commanded the presence of his great grandchild in Xois, and unhesitatingly acknowledged him as the heir to his throne. Osiris had married his sister Isis, even, so it was said, while both of them were still within their mother's womb, and when he became king he made her queen regent and the partner of all his undertakings. The Egyptians were as yet but half civilized; they were cannibals, and though occasionally they lived upon the fruits of the earth, they did not know how to cultivate them. Osiris taught them the art of making agricultural implements, the plough and the hoe, field labour, the rotation of crops, the harvesting of wheat and barley, and vine culture. Isis weaned them from cannibalism, healed their diseases by means of medicine or of magic, united women to men in legitimate marriage, and showed them how to grind grain between two flat stones, and to prepare bread for the household. She invented the loom, with the help of her sister Nephthys, and was the first to weave and bleach linen. There was no worship of the gods before Osiris established it, appointed the offerings, regulated the order of ceremonies, and composed the text and melodies of the liturgies. He built cities, among them Thebes itself, according to some, though others declared that he was born there. As he had been the model of a just and pacific king, so did he desire to be that of a victorious conqueror of nations, and placing the regency in the hands of Isis, he went forth to war against Asia, accompanied by Thot the ibis and the jackal Anubis. He made little or no use of force of arms, but he attacked men by gentleness and persuasion, softened them with songs in which voices were accompanied by instruments, and taught them also the arts which he had made known to the Egyptians. No country escaped his beneficent action, and he did not return to the banks of the Nile until he had traversed and civilized the world from one horizon to the other. Sit Typhon was red-haired and white-skinned, of violent, gloomy, and jealous temper. Secretly he aspired to the crown, and nothing but the vigilance of Isis had kept him from rebellion during the absence of his brother. The rejoicings which celebrated the king's return to Memphis provided Sit with his opportunity for seizing the throne. He invited Osiris to a banquet along with 72 officers whose support he had ensured, made a wooden chest of cunning workmanship, and ordered that it should be brought in to him, in the midst of the feast. As all admired its beauty, he sportively promised to present it to any one among the guests whom it should exactly fit. All of them tried it, one after another, and all unsuccessfully, but when Osiris lay down within it, immediately the conspirators shut the lid, nailed it firmly down, soldered it together with melted lead, and then threw it into the Tanitic branch of the Nile, which carried it to the sea. The news of the crime spread terror on all sides. The gods friendly to Osiris feared the fate of their master, and hid themselves within the body of animals to escape the malignity of the new king. Isis cut off her hair, rent her garments, and set out in search of the chest. She found it aground near the mouth of the river, under the shadow of a gigantic acacia, deposited it in a secluded place where no one ever came, and then took refuge in Buto, her own domain and her native city, whose marshes protected her from the designs of Typhon, even as in historic times they protected more than one pharaoh from the attacks of his enemies. There she gave birth to the young Horus, nursed and reared him in secret among the reeds, far from the machinations of the wicked one. But it happened that Sit, when hunting by moonlight, caught sight of the chest, opened it, and recognizing the corpse, cut it up into 14 pieces, which he scattered abroad at random. Once more Isis set forth on her woeful pilgrimage. She recovered all the parts of the body excepting one only, which the Oxyrhynchus had greedily devoured, and with the help of her sister Nephthys, her son Horus, Anubis, and Thot, she joined together and embalmed them, and made of this collection of his remains an imperishable mummy, capable of sustaining for ever the soul of a god. On his coming of age, Horus called together all that were left of the loyal Egyptians, and formed them into an army. His followers, Shos-u'u-huru, defeated the accomplices of Sit, Samiu-Sit, who were now driven in their turn to transform themselves into gazelles, crocodiles, and serpents, animals which were henceforth regarded as unclean and Typhonian. For 3 days the two chiefs had fought together under the forms of men and of hippopotami, when Isis, apprehensive as to the issue of the duel, determined to bring it to an end. Lo! she caused chains to descend upon them, and made them to drop upon Horus. Thereupon Horus prayed aloud, saying, "I am thy son Horus." Then Isis spake unto the fetters, saying, break and unloose yourselves from my son Horus." She made other fetters to descend, and let them fall upon her brother Sit. Forthwith he lifted up his voice and cried out in pain, and she spake unto the fetters, and said unto them, "Break." Yea, when Sit prayed unto her many times, saying, "Wilt thou not have pity upon the brother of thy son's mother?" Then her heart was filled with compassion, and she cried to the fetters, "Break, for he is my eldest brother," and the fetters unloosened themselves from him, and the two foes again stood face to face, like two men who will not come to terms. Horus, furious at seeing his mother deprive him of his prey, turned upon her like a panther of the south. She fled before him on that day when battle was waged with Sit the Violent, and he cut off her head. But Thot transformed her by his enchantments, and made a cow's head for her, thereby identifying her with her companion, Hathor. The war went on, with all its fluctuating fortunes, till the gods at length decided to summon both rivals before their tribunal. According to a very ancient tradition, the combatants chose the ruler of a neighbouring city, Thot, lord of Hermopolis Parva, as the arbitrator of their quarrel. Sit was the first to plead, and he maintained that Horus was not the son of Osiris, but a bastard, whom Isis had conceived after the death of her husband. Horus triumphantly vindicated the legitimacy of his birth, and Thot condemned Sit to restore, according to some, the whole of the inheritance which he had wrongfully retained, according to others, part of it only. The gods ratified the sentence, and awarded to the arbitrator the title of Ua Pira Hu Hui, he who judges between two parties. A legend of more recent origin, and circulated after the worship of Osiris had spread over all Egypt, affirmed that the case had remained within the jurisdiction of Sibu, who was father to the one, and grandfather to the other party. Sibu, however, had pronounced the same judgment as Thot, and divided the kingdom into halves, Pashui. Sit retained the valley from the neighbourhood of Memphis to the first cataract, while Horus entered into possession of the Delta. Egypt henceforth consisted of two distinct kingdoms, of which one, that of the north, recognized Horus, the son of Isis, as its patron deity, and the other, that of the south, placed itself under the protection of Sit Nubiiti, the god of Ombos. The moiety of Horus, added to that of Sit, formed the kingdom which Sibu had inherited, but his children failed to keep it together, though it was afterwards reunited under pharaohs of human race. End of Section 19. Read by Professor Heather and By. For more free audiobooks or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org.